This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast, your podcast for beer distributors by beer distributors. I'm your hostess with the mostest here with Moneyball Ross, Data Mike, and Analytics Alicia. I don't know yet. We're still working on a name for a nickname for Alicia. But I got to take a run at these from time to time. It took Mikey a couple times to get him. Moneyball Ross was always easy. That was going to happen no matter what. But Alicia, we're still working on a nickname for you. You don't get to give your own nickname. I have to anoint it to you. So at some point in time, it will happen in the right way. But we were on the road this week, Alicia. We had some fun out in the Northeast. We had some steamas. Did you ever get any chowder?
No chowder.
No chowder. No chowder. We had some lobster and some steamas. It was good. We had a good time. What is a steama, Alicia? Did you ever get the full download of what a steama is?
I mean, not really. They're basically like clams, that's how I kind of took it, but slightly different. Everyone in New England probably hates me for saying that. But they were delicious.
They were. You got to peel them out, boys, and you got to open them up and peel the little skin off of it, and then you got to loop back around, and then you got to dip it in, and then you got to dip it in some water to get off the sand, and then you got to dip it in some butter to make it taste good.
Sounds right up Mike's alley here.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah,
Right
yes,
up
it is
Mike's
delicious. So today, Alicia, one more thing we want to talk about is that we have to pick on Scott, right? We said that we would tell the story, and we have to pick on Scott. So we're working with a client and a rep specifically, but you fixed some stuff for this rep, and then we got an interesting email back, didn't we?
We sure did. So this was after, we met with the team. Scott he had a question, raised an issue, and we were following up with him. And so Bud and I were kind of seated in a conference room later on, and we're having a conversation. I think that we're smoothing things over. I think we're all good. Time loose ends with Scott. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see this email come through, and the subject line said, "Are you freaking kidding me?" And New England, they already kind of sound pissed off because of their accent. So I was like, this is no different than, meeting a new buyer. You want to set a good impression, all of these things. And I was like, Bud, wait a minute. I gotta see what this is all about. And by the time I go check that email, I get another one that comes through, and he was so apologetic. He was like, "I am so sorry. I was using my voice to text this or that." And, meeting Scott and understanding his personality, he was he was so funny. He was like, I thought I was going to end up in HR's office. Now it's like, hey, no worries, bleep. It was great. It was great. Team was great. With some really great memories from their team.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, you did a great job this week, Alicia. It was a lot of fun. Many thanks to the client who had us out there as well, too. It was a lot of fun to hang out with them. They did a great job. So we're looking forward to seeing what they can do next. And that kind of inspired a couple conversations around, distribution and tracking and doing all the execution stuff we do. So today's talk will be a little more specific around, tracking distribution. And really, I think this comes inspired from this quote, Mark Twain, that I'm going to share with everybody here, is that it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And Alicia, you had said simple distribution ain't so simple. And we're going to talk about why that is, how different people call distribution and points of distribution different things, and what that looks like. So that's the topic for today. We're going to dive in deep. This is going to be a real Mike and Alicia kind of conversation. And really, at the end of the day, this is important, right? We need to count points of distribution. We want to have placements. We want to have products out on the shelf. but how we do it, what it means, how we explain it, people will have different vernacular around this. They have different terminology and different definitions. And we're going to make a run because we're the experts in the space. This is all we do all day long on defining what that looks like and what that means and how to start to use these things. So let's start with that. There's really, in our minds, like 6 flavors of points of distribution, right? So the foundation is like the number of points of distribution. So Alicia, we'll start with you. Like, talk us through like what number of points of distribution means. Is it simple distribution? Is it not simple distribution? Is it multiple points of distribution? Like, walk us through the foundation to get us going here.
Yeah. So points of distribution, there's lots of different terminology. First, I'll put that out there that's used within our industry. And I've always said that it is such a wicked game of telephone that we play with suppliers. There's different levels that when the program starts, it has to go through the brand team. Maybe there's an SEC role, a few different variations of the programs, different languages used, different terminology. Sometimes that terminology is, it's used incorrectly before it even is exposed to the sales team. So really, it's so important that we are all understanding what these terms mean, and that's really what inspired this episode. So when you're tracking points of distribution, there's 2 main things that we're looking at. The first one is referred to mainly as effective distribution. So that's tracking the total number of SKUs that we're targeting for a program. So depending on how many SKUs you're tracking, you could have a maximum of, let's say, if we're targeting 6, then our maximum is going to be 6 per account. On the flip side of that, simple distribution, the best way that I can explain it, and we've explained it to so many clients, is that you're tracking the number of buyers, right? So either they bought or they didn't. So the maximum number that you can reach is 1. It's just 0 or 1. And that's the way that I like to explain it to our SCCs or our sales analysts when we're offering training and training on BXP, is we need to start with the basics and just make sure that everyone understands the terms at a basic level before we can even start tracking the programs out. Beyond just knowing the difference between effective distribution and simple distribution, we can also track that distribution in different formats, right? So you could use it using a percent difference, and then we could also use it just using a raw number. The next layer that we could go into is when we're talking about what time frames we're tracking that distribution. A lot of programs are just written in a way that we're tracking points of distribution during, 1 month. But then others might track distribution with a comparison period where you're saying we're tracking only new placements and we're using a comparison period or a non-buy period of the last 90 days or 60 days, which is really common for tracking new placements in our industry. So that's kind of distribution, points of distribution in a nutshell. And the various ways that you can really kind of see the programs come together and really where the confusion all stems from, because it's not so simple.
Mikey?
Yeah, good point. Real quick, just to add to that, because now that we're dealing with wine and liquor supplier or distributors only now too, right? That don't have beer, and that term simple distribution is brand new to them. They're not really familiar with that term, and I know that's really generally used for beer, but I also kind of feel like that's mostly an AB term too. Alicia, coming from an MC house, was that term simple distribution used a lot?
Yeah.
Okay, because I feel like sometimes AB, I mean, I know AB says it all the time, but dealing with some MC clients where it may be new to them, I didn't know if that was just, if they had a different term for simple distribution.
No, I'd say that the term is used across AB and Molson houses. It's probably more prevalent in the beer world just because of the on-premise play with draft. Half barrels, 6 barrels, counting the number of buyers. I'd say that's probably why it's less prevalent in the spirits world, just because of that component.
That was my question. Do you see simple used mostly on premise, or do you see it used some and off it a little bit, or is it just mostly on premise?
Mostly on. I, never say never. I've definitely seen it used in off premise, but mostly on premise is tracking simple distro.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we struggled with the name of it when we were with the product, what we were going to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it a lot in the NA world too now. When new NA products hit the market, just looking for buying accounts.
Yeah.
So tracking your buying account, tracking distribution.
So are there any kind of got-yous between points of distribution and simple points of distribution due to the slightly different calculations or processes that like people need to be aware of or reps need to be aware of when they're thinking about this or looking at this, or maybe sales analysts need to be aware of around detailed explanations so that everybody can understand? Like my thing.
Maybe it might be helpful. What are the other things you've heard it called?
Yeah,
just so that
good question.
People want to reference. Like, I'm curious because I mean it's funny because you brought up 6 barrels and you guys were in the Northeast, and that was the first time I came into contact with people calling them logs.
Logs, yeah. 6 those logs, 6 barrels.
So what else have we heard simple distribution called?
Buying accounts.
Yeah, buying accounts.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can buys. I think it's just the point of distribution. So pod, POD, right, for short. A lot of times the programs can be written in a way where the pod part of it is not necessarily defined. And so it'll say, get new placements of or new points of distribution, but then, you can't really decipher, is it effective or simple based on how that program is written because that detail is left out. So a lot of times you
good point.
To the supplier and just say like, what are we measuring at the end of the day? Is there a report that we can line up? And that's how you can kind of get to that total. To understand what they're, trying to say. And like I had mentioned too, sometimes our brand team or suppliers might be throwing around the word and actually be using it incorrectly. So the report is the truth. That's the easiest and the quickest way that I could usually get to that answer. And then, let them know that they're actually using the term wrong. But another
it's crazy. I mean, it's funny watching people that spend all day, every day in the industry and in distribution struggle to define these things. I mean, I'm not saying that you're struggling. You're doing a great job. I'm just saying that like sitting around tables, listening to people and hearing them struggle to try to define something that, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, in the industry, everybody throws around the word pods like it's a universal language, when in reality, it can mean a lot of different things.
So moving on to kind of the next section is probably like growth metrics around this, Mike. So are we growing pods? Are we declining pods? Are we keeping the same amount of pods? What are we trying to achieve? Do we want to keep the same amount? Do we want to try to grow? Do we want to slow the decline? There's a whole section around pod growth and pod decline as well too, not just simple distribution, or not just how many buying accounts there are or how many pods there are effectively out in the marketplace. It's also, what are we gaining? What are we losing? Where did we lose those? Do we need to gain those back too?
Yeah, and I feel like this is the biggest piece of the puzzle, and this gets lost in translation so much. Like Alicia said, it's like the telephone game, right? With suppliers, because new pod growth can mean so many different things, right? Hey, take a baseline number of all the pods I have out there and add to it, right? So new pods. Then you're also talking about net new pods, which could be defined in
slow down, Mike. Slow down. Take your time.
But what I'm saying is that there's so many different ways to define it. But ultimately, what you want to do is grow your points of distribution. So you're taking a reference period. What are you referring to? Right? And then you're taking your tracking, or what are you tracking out to see if there's new growth to determine that. And I don't know if that's the road we're going down right now, but net new versus regular new. But that is something that just gets totally skewed in our industry as well.
Take us down the road, bro.
All right.
Go.
I've been eager. I've been sitting over here just rocking in my seat. Couldn't wait to jump into net new pods.
Can you display the visual? Because I think this is going to help a lot of our listeners.
Well, yeah. Before we get into that, I think that this is the biggest one that you need to ask your supplier. When you get a supplier incentive and they're looking for new pods, the first thing you need to know is, what is the reference? What is the tracking, right? Which will show you in the visual. And do we count fall offs? Are we counting loss distribution? look for the word maintain, because that all means different things. And when we look, go ahead and throw up that visual and we'll kind of walk through that,
I'm working
because
on it
there's
right
a couple
now.
different ways to track new placements, right? Like I said, you can take a reference period the last 90 days, lock that number in, and then whatever I tack onto that is new placements. Or you can make sure that I resell all of those placements in a 90-day period, maintain my distribution, right, and count lost distribution, which is two totally different ways of doing it. And if you're not aligned with the supplier incentive, your results are going to be completely different. I feel like that's one of the biggest things that we see a lot of people throw around, or suppliers throw around the word net new when they really mean new. And if you ask them, what does net new mean? Then they're like, oh, just new pods. Well, what is new? What is a new pod in your eyes? All right, cool. So we got the visual. Let me blow my screen up here a little bit bigger so I can see what we're doing. So this first one, new pods. We have a red box around our reference period, right? That red box is our previous 90 days. We're in the month of April. I'm planning out my incentive for the month of April to grow pods versus the last 90 days. So the red box is over January, February, and March. I'm looking at all the distribution in those 3 months and counting that as existing distribution, right? So 5 pods in January, 5 more in February, 5 more in March. The rep has 15 existing points of distribution out there. Now in April, if he grows and gets 3 more, technically he has 18 now, right? Because he already had 15. He got 3 new ones in April. He has 18 pods, 3 new ones. But we locked that reference period in January, February, March. Lock those numbers in. That box did not move along with the month of April, which is where we get the term fall offs, right? Because as we start tracking into April, I wish I had a pen here, I could explain this better. As we get into April 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, sometimes our reference period also moves January 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when we get to the end of April, we're only counting everything sold in the previous 90 days ending April 30th. Right? So if you go to the next slide, net new pods. That is exactly what I just explained. As the month moved on, our tracking period moved on too. So now our reference is still January, February, March. The rep had 15 pods during that time frame. But as April moved on and we got to the end of April, we're only looking back from 90 days from April 30th to count what our existing pods and what we're tracking out, right? So the 5 pods that he had in January fell off. Now that rep has to go back in and resell or reorder those 5 pods for them to count. So in this example here, there was 5 in April, 5 in January, 5 in February, 5 in March, and 3 in April, just in the last one. But the 5 from January fell off. So the delta here would be -2 because this rep didn't resell 3 of those pods that they lost in January. And I think that's the biggest disconnect of, is our tracking period moving along with the month? And I feel like AB is really big on that. There's a couple other suppliers that are pretty big on that, but the vast majority really just do a static, the first slide, right? A static reference period. Which, I mean, there's a lot of opinions about this, and I'm the first to throw my opinion around, so I'll throw it at you. I feel like in our industry now, the shelf life on all the products that we have, and we're dealing with a lot more RTDs, FMBs, wine spirits than we ever have before, even NA. The shelf life on these products are a lot longer than 3 months. And in most cases, if you're tracking net new and you're not counting all the distribution that happened in that first month of the reference period, chances are those products are still there. You still have distribution. And your distribution report, your pod tracker, just became a rate of sales tracker, making these placements sell through every 90 days. When in reality, we all know that most of them can't, especially RTDs with a longer shelf life, NA, stuff like that.
Mikey, does any of this have to do with rolling too? Because my big bugaboo is like over this whole idea of that we're going to roll these things and that every day it's going to move, because that becomes a whack-a-mole problem for the reps. And like the way that the industry needs to understand this, and this is my opinion and bugaboo around this, is every single day the line moves. There's not
that was my comment too.
There's not a single other piece of element or sales tracker or sales performance thing where the line moves every single day, and it makes no sense. And the hard part about having the line move every day, and I don't know why people can't get this in their head around this, is that right here at the end of the month, if you've got a week left and you have 4 pods fall off in this example, or 2 pods fall off, you might not be going back to those stores for deliveries with the days you have left. So you thought you were in good shape, going to finish the month in the money, executing on the program. Voila, 2 pods rolled off. Haha, we caught you. And you can't even get them back to the store and execute on them without, needing to do a hot shot or without needing to reroute a truck in some way, shape, or form. So I just do not like the rolling idea and changing the rules every single day and rolling this around.
You can make a static that it doesn't include January, so they come into it knowing how much they lost.
Yes. Like, why wouldn't we want to know the line before we get started? Every other program's like that.
Yeah, there are many suppliers out there that do exactly that. And like what you're saying, as the month moves on, the tracking period is also moving, and days and weeks are falling off of what we're counting as your distribution. And to be honest, it loses a lot of trust in the system because you're looking at your numbers every day and you're going, what the heck, yesterday +2. Yeah. Now I'm at 0, right? And then it comes to payout and you're -2 because that, like you said, that bar keeps moving. That's what I do love about our system. And if anybody's tracking pods in any other system, when you just separate the reference and the tracking period like we have here in this design, on day 1 of that incentive, the rep knows everything that's going to fall off in January.
Yeah.
This incentive will start with a negative number.
Correct.
Just to get the flat before you even know what new pods or net new pods you would have at that point.
Yeah. You know the number. You know where you're going to be at. And Alicia, it only makes sense to share with the reps where they're going to be at or where they're going to start so that they know how to finish. They know how to get to the finish line in the right way.
But I'm going to throw a yes, but. You ready for the yes, but?
Ready.
What happens if I sell a case in February and that case gets returned in April?
In what system?
Yeah.
Because just like pods mean different things to different people, pods are tracked differently in different systems too. Technically, by the rules, you don't get credit for that point of distribution because it's no longer there, right? And that'd be 100% gaming the system, sending it in, collecting your POD payout.
Thank you.
Right, we're back. What kicked us all out? We're back.
My bad.
I don't even know what were we talking about.
We were talking about different system, different things. You have a pod returned in April, and
in February you sold one case in to get the POD.
He's with us, Ross.
Bud said he hates it when I do that. What are we talking
do
about?
what? He's no, but I think it's important to clarify this because this is a fun one because even if you have locked in periods, the numbers can change based on this, and it depends on how you view it. So I think this is important.
Absolutely, yeah. Because if not, you're opening the door to being gamed. Because as a rep, we all know those accounts can send anything you want, right? And in most cases, you can also pick it back up, sneak it back in, and you got your point of distribution. You got paid.
I mean, what's crazy is that the two biggest Razes in our space disagree on this definition.
That is crazy. That is crazy to me.
And it should be standardized across one. Like it should be just to me, if you pick up the same case and you sold it, and you pick it back up, that's a loss. Like it should be negative.
I mean, I think we should all call them logs, not six barrels.
Well, there you go. BBL versus full barrels versus kegs. People all kinds of different ways to say that.
Your right answer doesn't make it the right answer.
Exactly. Do we see anybody actively doing rolling periods anymore, or has that pretty much been sussed out of the process on our end?
I can't think of a single client that internally tracks rolling. Obviously, not with VXP and not even with the route accounting system, because of those issues that we talked about. But a lot of suppliers still do. They're reporting that they send out their results are on a rolling period.
Makes no
Which
sense.
is hard to align the results.
It's just impossible.
If you're cross-referencing that in your own route accounting system, and especially if you don't know the date range that they pulled it, and you're just taking their data and shaking your head, yes, it looks good, without even really knowing.
I mean, is there an argument to be made? I mean, the first thought that came to my mind, if I'm a supplier, I don't look as bad anytime you pull it because they're slowly falling off. Versus if I start with a big negative, I look terrible. I guess it depends on your frame of reference.
Well, that comes back to what are you trying to achieve? Are we trying to achieve an understanding of where we want to get to, or are we trying to screw with somebody for a whole month's time or a couple months worth of time?
Well, if my boss looks in, I don't want it to see we have -5 points of distribution.
And the other end to it, if you're a rep, you're not going to want to stand in the cooler for an extra 15 minutes looking through your history to make sure you reordered that product within 90 days.
I'm just saying from the supplier. I'm just saying from this. I could see why a supplier might want to do that because they don't want to look bad. If I'm the DM covering the from the sales perspective, it's clear to me what's better. But I'm just trying to attach a reason as to why suppliers still do this.
I mean, that could be a reason. At the end of the day, though, if you haven't had the items resold, haven't had the products resold, like the reality of the situation is the item hasn't been resold, boss. We got to go recover these pods. Like, stop babying people and doing these crazy. It's a data milk run at that point in time, Ross. You're trying to whitewash what's happening or data wash with what's happening instead of just showing the reality and being like, hey, if we don't resell these pods due to rate of sale, we're going to lose these things. So like, we got to figure out how to resell these pods on the rate of sale and get this back out there. And we got to track these things down and get them executed on, or find net new so we can recover our placements to where we were at.
Or it could be just hey, this is the way we've always done it thing. Classic case of this is the way we've always done it. This is the way we run our reports. Here's the reporting.
It goes back to the question, right? Which is what?
What are we trying to achieve?
Alicia, what's the biggest difference on this front between wine and spirits and beer?
For pod tracking would be how pod is defined, right? In number of units or bottles in most cases. And you see that in beer too. You might see it coupled with a volume. So pod equals a new placement, but you have to sell at least 2 cases. In wine and spirits, we're looking at, pod is 3 bottles or 6 bottles or, whatever that definition is. So I think the takeaway is just to ensure that your team isn't chasing the wrong goal. The SEC role, the sales analyst, or if it's a brand manager, you have to be incredibly clear and consistent with the language that you're using, the terminology that you're using when you're publishing these programs to your team.
So they're using like a volume qualification of what defines the pod instead of just a single placement or point of purchase. It's the actual, hey, you need XYZ number of velocity or pods sold.
Yep.
Do we see people using that more and more outside of wine and spirits, or is that still primarily wine and spirits solution?
I'd say that in the beer world, what we've seen is pods 1 and 2 will get you this amount of money. Pods 3, 4, 5, will get you this tier, and so on and so forth. So pod is still however you define it, but then you kind of have these extra layers to have the reps sell in either more SKUs or a higher velocity of the SKU.
Yeah.
Do we feel like, I think it makes a ton of sense in wine, especially in wine, a minimum quantity necessary to qualify for a point of distribution, and it varies depending on the value of the wine, for example. Do we feel like beer should use this more? I feel like this is a concept that might be relatively new to beer. Do we feel like this has more legs and should have more legs in our space on the beer side?
There AB loves to do that to where on-premise package or things like that too, where it's like a minimum quantity. I've seen some other suppliers really push on that. My personal opinion is then if I'm a rep and I'm at an account and it's a slower rate of sale, but I want to try this new product, I'm not going to get credit for just trying one, right? That one case might take me 3 weeks to get through or a month to get through. I'd rather order my second case when it's fresher, right? And I'm not sitting on the extra 2 cases. And then you got to think about that from a total finished product loss standpoint too. If we're requiring every new point of distribution to get paid out with a minimum quantity, we're forcing a lot of product out that may not be able to sell through. So we're going to be taking a lot of that back in.
But is that a quality distribution point if I can't turn? Right? What am I paying for as a supplier? What's my goal? You know, I feel like I want quality distribution where my product's going to turn.
Yeah.
But if you're paying for non-targeted accounts, which is a whole nother metrics,
Let's go.
Distribution.
Let's go.
There's smart distribution. Distribution, get this leap everywhere. Put it in Tony's back room.
Or not everywhere, just anywhere.
Anywhere. And then there's smart distribution, right? Right places. And what you're talking about is smart distribution. And absolutely, you want it to be in those accounts and you want the velocity to go through. But if you're paying reps for just distribution, you're going to get distribution. It's going to be anywhere they can get it. And there are so many of those accounts out there. We know that we can just cut it in. Throw it. If it's an FMB, cool. It's over there in the Red Bull cooler, right? If it's a craft beer, oh yeah, it's up here with the singles. It's in a 6-pack. I mean, there's really no rhyme or reason when you're paying on just everything for distribution.
Yeah. It's crazy, right? There's just all these different ways to do it. And the other thing too, Alicia, then correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of this like bottle minimum to qualify for a pod is all centered around like shelf space, what the owner or the brand owner is like, well, it should be this, it should be that. It's 3 bottles or 6 bottles because of their expectation of how much shelf space they're looking to obtain as well too, and that kind of thing as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what's being looked at. And as a sales rep, it's really tricky to keep track of all of that. So having a system that you're able to rely on and track that without having all of these different reports that the sales team has to reference is key, to keep all of these programs straight and to keep your team focused on the right goals.
Are we tracking all this stuff as an industry for no reason at all, or is it actually driving results? Like at the end of the day, is it driving results, or is it more nuanced than that?
Debatable. I mean, honestly,
deep question about it.
I know.
Yeah.
Like asking, like, what's the meaning of life?
Well, I mean, like distribution is sales, sales is distribution. Like Ross always likes to say, what are you trying to achieve? Like, I just don't know. I don't know very often. Do we have an ROI? Can you run these programs and track an ROI? We started doing that. We're starting to do that with clients around tracking ROI. We've done it a couple times already in some like research projects, and like some stuff is like ROI negative, like huge negative. There's a blog post I've got about it on our website. That's like the distributors spent $10 a case for points of distribution, never got rebought, had to get picked back up. So now they're net huge negative on the cost of the product, plus on the dollars and cents sent to the reps as well too. And if it's down the road, like we complain about finished product loss and out of code and close to code, but then we never do anything about it, Ross, right?
Well, it's worse than that. You could have taken focus away from brands that should have been sold in. You could have traded out a brand that was moving faster. I mean, there is externalities that you can't even measure from a cost perspective. I suspect a lot of it's negative, but then again, I'm biased, so
we both are incredibly biased around the concept of like let the market work, let the velocity and the profit components work, and see where the chips fall, and don't worry too much about it.
I mean, suspect from a supplier's perspective, it's net positive, but I mean, suppliers need to get a hell of a lot smarter around how they're deploying these things. But that's a whole different subject that we've touched on before. But no.
Alicia, Mike, any best practices you see people taking on in this realm that's like where they're actually getting a ton out of it in your minds?
I have to kind of change my opinion on one thing, and I'm sure I've talked about it on one of the episodes of this podcast, but I used to have a pretty big opinion on targeted distribution. But I feel like, making sure that it's going to the right places, right? And going through, looking at your accounts, where are we not? I mean, that was one of the biggest things that Tom and I would always do at Atlas. And yeah, I mean, our account base is different than a lot, but even area managers, team leads, things like that. When you run your non-buy report and you're looking, where is this product not? And if it's somewhere that really should be, like that's, to me, that's how you're going to get the most out of your investment when you're paying for pods, because these are the places we really need to be. And somehow this rep or that rep hasn't really figured it out on their own that it needs to be there, or haven't done the work. So now we need to incentivize them a little bit more to make sure that it's in there. But really paying attention and narrowing down that list instead of just, hey, anywhere and everywhere. These are the accounts we really, really need.
Alicia, anything to add?
The only other best practice that we did it within our organization is it's one, layer of the equation. And I feel like we were unraveling just a single layer, but I know that there's more, and I know that we'll get there to the ROI for the program, but at least tracking the budgetary amount. So how much are we planning to spend for this program versus how much we're actually spending? And then based on what was returned, we kind of assigned this tier just to say, was this program successful or not? Were we overspending? Well, then let's go back, because it's pretty routine for brand teams to just say, hey, what did we do last year? And then just repeat, especially if there's turnover within that team. So just to have a metric around how much did we spend and what was the budget execution, and were we okay with what we spent? Just as a repository of how your programs are being stored, so you can refer back to them and have all of that information in one spot was really helpful for our team.
And I think along with, with that in a lift analysis, where were we before the incentive or objective? Where were we after? And then fast forwarding 90 days after that to see what kind of retention you had. But alongside of that should also be an FPL report. Because, we lifted sales on this and we saw this bump. The bump went away after a month. And then 3 months later, here's our FPL report on that particular brand or package too. To really just see a total picture.
Define FPL for everybody.
Finished product loss. So in this case, out of code, close to code, you could take a peek at, but I'd closely be looking at how much of that product went out of code, because that should be a part of your total analysis.
It's a cost at the end of the day. Like, what's the cost of the product? What's the GP made off the product in the sales? What did I invest in an incentive program or an objective program to pay the reps to execute on placing the product? And, then what did I pick back up, and what did I continue to sell during the period, as all my pluses and minuses to get down to that net ROI number that's going to roll back into this, and what that looks like. And doing that is people don't do it because it's hard, right? It's a series of reports over long periods. And most of the time we've moved on to 3 or 4 or 6 programs later. And it's like, who cares, right? Like, we did it. We made the supplier happy, or we didn't make them happy. We made our team happy, or we didn't make them happy. And we're a quarter or 4 months or 5 months down the road. Why are we worried about that anymore? We'll just move on to the next thing, right? And it's just in the rearview mirror. I've even seen a couple people like looking at their processes, like they've rinsed and repeated the same pod target program over and over again. Meanwhile, their finished product loss is continuing to grow on it. Like, they're just not even paying attention to the process. And you've got to pay attention to, the outcomes of what is coming back too. And we need to have some serious conversations from time to time with suppliers around, like, this doesn't work. This isn't going to work in our market or for us, or is not getting the job done. And you might have to ruffle some feathers from time to time. And we need to be more okay with that as distributors. We got to be more okay with that. We've got the power to be able to do it. And you don't have to say yes to every single supplier on every single program, regardless of what you feel like you've done in the past too.
How do you tell them no?
I think the best way to do it is the way that we did it, Mike, is just like, it's not going to work. Here's the data, the historical reference of how it's worked out. We've attempted this before. It's not going to happen. Or you come with other hard data, like, why would I distract my sales team with your program and placement program when it's half the GP, 70% of the GP, and half the velocity, right? Like, the math, even on the front end, doesn't make any sense. It's the guys, it's the knuckleheads that, I think they're out of business now, so I can say their name, but it's the knuckleheads over at the Canteen Seltzer And they were like, we want to do a program, and their GP per CE is $7 a case, and Cutwater's 12, and their velocity is 10% of what Cutwater's is. Cutwater sells 90% faster. Why would I cut my focus on my team's GP per CE in half to sell something that is 90% slower? It makes no sense to spend any money around that brand at all.
And one of the best things that came out of that conversation too was you told them to take their incentive dollars, right,
and invest in GP.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how they were going to win.
Yeah,
and they didn't do that.
No, I mean, I never got a response to the email. I don't think I was.
That's why they're in business today and so successful.
Yeah. And I wasn't warranted a response with the email tone that I sent back either. So that particular one struck a chord on that day.
What about my biggest pet peeve one? I want an answer on this one from you guys.
Uh-oh.
The rotation of draft handles and the chronic just paying out the ass for it to be on and then rotated the next month.
Yeah.
So what it means, is this still happening? And what advice do you have for suppliers?
Yeah, it's still happening. I mean, the rotation nation is really, it's not what it used to be. It's not what it was, 5 years ago, but it's still a real thing. And it probably depends on how you look at it, right? Because you can look at it from the eyes of a sales rep and from the eyes of a retailer and the eyes of a consumer and saying, yeah, kind of like something frustrating in here every once in a while. I get sick of the same old beers being on tap, right? And they do like to keep it fresh. And in the eyes of a supplier, they're like, hey, we're paying you to get this on, and then you're going over somewhere else, and the next flavor of the month we're paying, and somebody else is paying you to get that on, and you're fighting. So I do think that rotation is healthy for draft. It's healthy for the on-premise. Nobody wants to get stagnant, right? And making sure that rotation that's happening and staying within your portfolio is healthy. So how can you combat that? I mean, I do like when suppliers do hey, anything from our book, right? Keep it on, get it on, keep it on. That way I can have an IPA, I could have your blonde, I could have a hazy, right? Or I could have a light lager. I kept it with you, but I also kept it fresh for the account and for the consumer, and we both win at the end. What I have seen a lot lately that it just boggles my mind is the rebuys, and not just the rebuy portion, because I understand that that's an important part of any kind of incentive or placement is to make sure that retention is there, right? But the payout on the rebuy has grown significantly. I feel like lately, grasping at straws, right? Trying to keep that placement, but now the amount that is getting paid out is definitely negative when it's coming to the GP of that product, for sure. Way negative. And I don't know, I don't know the philosophy, I guess, behind it as far as paying that much out. I know the importance of the rebuy and keeping the handle, but I just don't understand why we are putting so much money towards it.
How much money are we talking?
I can't disclose, but I just built one that was okay. I'll disclose. It was $50 a rebuy.
How much was it for the first one?
For up to 3 rebuys. I mean, not just one initial rebuy. I'm talking every barrel, and that was 6s and halves, both same payout. That's what got
same
me.
payout on 6s and halves.
Mm-hmm.
I'd sell 6 barrels. Like that. I mean, an automatic hack. This is an automatic hack.
Yeah.
Any rep listening out there, we talk about hacking your pay, automatic hack. You got that program in front of you, sell 6 barrels to the moon. Like, rebuy those suckers.
Please tell me that was 100% funded by a supplier and the distributor didn't co-op that.
I can't tell you that part, Ross. Get mad. No, there was some co-op happening there.
No.
The on-premises, people are the business is tough. People are still grasping at straws, especially on the supplier side, fighting for dollars, fighting for opportunities, bringing dollars to the table. Like that's why it's happening, Ross, at the end of the day. And how this is going to shake out long term. Like the merry-go-round is going to stop on this stuff. It always does. It goes up and down. There's ebbs and flows to it, and that kind of thing is going to stop relatively quickly.
And I think everything we just talked about, that whole draft, everything, it really comes back to what Alicia said. You have to
run an analysis. What was the return on investment on that incentive or objective? Because that one, I guarantee you, was way in the negative, 100%, even in the long term.
Well, we broke this down pretty in detail. Is there anything that you three have missed or haven't asked that we want to talk about as a group on this topic?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions, mostly centered around suppliers, and they're not on the pod today. But,
what kind of questions do you want to ask suppliers, Mikey?
all of them. All of
All
them.
of them.
Why
All
are
of
you
them.
running?
Are you sure these questions, or we need to get like a Festivus pull out for you, like an airing of the grievances?
We really need to get a supplier or two on. Ask
Yeah.
them all the questions.
We can do that. I can hook us up with a supplier to ask a question for sure too.
Well,
Ask some
put your
questions.
list together of the 5 biggest offenders, and we'll surprise them.
Oh, that would be fun. Well, like the topic today, right? We went through this in detail because it's hard to understand. There's a lot of moving parts. Hopefully there are reps out there listening to this, team leads out there listening to this, and some leaders out there listening to this that are, take a second look at what you're doing, how you're tracking these things, understand the ebbs and flows to them, because simple distribution ain't so simple. And you've got to figure out a way to look at the forest through the trees. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to grow profits, we're trying to sell product, and just turning in space, to go back to Steve Jessup's word, we cannot create activity for activity's sake. And what I heard a lot of today is that when these programs are not organized well, it's a lot of activity for activity's sake. And we're not driving money to the bottom line for either company at the end of the day. No supplier or distributor, particularly with potentially that last example as well too. But boy, would I like to be a rep on that program. Right? It would take me that I'm not even very good at that stuff, and it took me no time to figure out how to hack that one around.
What the 6th barrel probably costs somewhere between $75 and $100. And if you're getting paid $50, I mean, you buy the 6th barrel, order it for them, $50, and then you just have a whole 6th barrel of beer for $25. Right?
I mean, we would never do something like that, Mikey.
No, never. That's why I have that kegerator back there and another 4 taps in that room over there. Right?
I love it. Well, if you like what we're doing, continue to share or continue to listen, hit the subscribe button, share with a friend, hit us up with an email at info@vxptech.com. That's info@vxptech.com. We got some stuff planned into the future. We had to reschedule one of our guests, Ross, around our economic discussion, but we will have Lester Jones on in the coming weeks, and we'll be able to have that out to the crew and talk all things economics, and you guys will nerd out for sure. It'll be a little Ross and Lester episode, and Mikey and I will take a back seat on that one. So, Alicia, great work this week on the on-site. Thanks for joining me up in the Northeast with Estemas. We needed Chowda next time, but we will do that. And y'all rock, and cheers to everybody out there in listener land. Thank you.
Cheers.